Mikhail Gorbachev was born in a village named Privolnoye in Russia. He was working hard and was an outstanding student, which earned him a law degree in Moscow. It was at his university where he joined the Young Communist League as the secretary of the law department. Gorbachev rose gradually and became the delegate of the party congress in 1961. Being the communist leader in his small community led many of the population to believe and trust in him. It was in his early rising to power when the general secretary of the Communist Party died unexpectedly, along with his successor not much later. Gorbachev was almost next in line, being under elder General Secretary Konstantin Chernenko. Not long after, Chernenko passed away, making Gorbachev the new General Secretary. After such hard working and distress, he was very well ready to make changes. During the 1980s, many problems were overtaking the Soviet Union, especially in the agricultural sector. Many factories' quality products were vanishing and were highly inefficient. It was then when the Communist Party secretary decided to start out a change. The Soviet Union changed when Gorbachev came up with the ideas of Perestroika and Glasnost. Perestroika was all about the reconstruction of the government, politics, and the economy in Russia. Semi democratic politics were introduced, including voting elections. The economic part of it was to abolish the monopolization and to create new opportunities for the smaller companies and businesses. Perestroika meant to reform that part of the economy and made it a semi free market system. The mindset of the people was still firmly the same, and it took a while before the policy made a change. The scarcity of goods made it difficult to maintain their established eating patterns and started conflict quickly. The other term and policy that was imposed on the Soviets was Glasnost, which means openness. The reforms behind Glasnost were more explicit towards the people than Perestroika. The removal of censored media made people really see what was going on in their country and made them understand the conditions they were living in before. The Soviets had now the liberty and right to speak for themselves and to express what they believed in. Writers and journalists could now expose their say to the Soviet people, which led to criticism of government officials. The long term effect of judging the government was the feel of more social rights on the Soviet community. The Soviet Union was undergoing lots of changes, but at last the people had their own freedom of speech. The reaction of the Soviet population was somewhat disastrous. The totalitarian former government left a residual effect, and riots, protests, and chaos were a big part of it. The people wanted back what they were used to strict government control, which Gorbachev had now dismantled. The people took the changes applied as radical and out of place, which increased the rate of crimes and strikes. From 1985 to 1991, Glasnost and Perestroika were up and working on the Soviets. It was hard not only for Gorbachev and the government, but also for the people. Their totalitarian, strict mindset of what authority had to be made it very hard for them to comprehend the benefit of these policies in the long run. The Cold War had been running for several years now, and the new semi democratic Russia had made some serious changes. The once considered radical applications were now reconstructing the Soviet Union and independentizing their citizens. It was clear that Russia was beginning to become more democratic, and the Soviet Union started to fall. On 1991, the Soviet Union vanished. Boris Yeltsin became the first popularly elected president, and the Cold War came to an end.
Дорогие соотечественники,
He said his action was inevitable. After 6.5 years in power, Mikhail Gorbachev confirmed his resignation on television tonight.
я покидаю свой пост с тревогой, но и с надеждой, с верой в вас, в вашу мудрость и силу духа. Мы наследники великой цивилизации, и сейчас от всех и каждого зависит, чтобы она возродилась к новой, современной и достойной жизни. Мы открылись миру, отказались от вмешательства в чужие дела, от использования войск за пределами страны. И нам ответили доверием, солидарностью и уважением. Мы стали одним из главных оплотов по переустройству современной цивилизации на мирных демократических началах.
In his 6 years in power, Mikhail Gorbachev transformed the Soviet Union from authoritarian dictatorship to fledgling democracy. He met with US presidents and slashed the Soviet nuclear arsenal. He allowed the Berlin Wall to fall and presided over the end of the Cold War and the start of warmer relations with the West. Sergei Stankevich is one of those who now assumes the mantle of power. A senior advisor to President Yeltsin, he's one of the younger generation of politicians taking over here. Though often opposing Gorbachev during the past 12 months, he says without the policies of Glasnost and Perestroika, he wouldn't have been able to express his political voice at all.
He gave us a chance. He gave us a possibility to express ourselves, to be real and active politicians, to insist upon our democratic principles against totalitarian regime. I'm absolutely sure that without Gorbachev, our communist totalitarian dictatorship can persist for 10 or 15 years more. And our life maybe can be lost.
Пост президента не предусмотрен.
Today, Gorbachev's oldest foe, President Boris Yeltsin, told the Russian parliament that it was time to end the tradition of disgracing former leaders. He said even after tonight's resignation, Mikhail Gorbachev would continue to contribute to the political life of the nation. Some Russian politicians believe that Gorbachev's contributions won't have the impact they used to. Making plans for the future today acquired the briefcase that controls the nuclear weapons of the former Soviet Union. President Yeltsin says he'll only use them once he's consulted with other Commonwealth leaders who have nuclear weapons on their soil. While new problems emerged, tonight in Red Square, the symbol of the old administration was removed. The red flag was lowered from the Kremlin, replaced by the Russian banner. At the very moment, Mikhail Gorbachev officially became the 8th and last leader of the Soviet Union.